Good afternoon, and welcome to the Wednesday afternoon conference call with Trusts Unlimited. This is Jim George speaking. I'm the non-attorney spokesman and facilitator for Trusts Unlimited. I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to listen to this call, particularly those of you calling in for the first time and those that will be listening to the replay over the next 24 to 48 hours. We like to move quickly through these calls and bottom line the information for you. We have a standard format. We spend a few minutes talking about the reinstitution and revaluation of the Iraqi dinar, which we continue to believe to be the base currency for the potential reset of some of these other currencies. A few minutes talking about the program we've put in place to assist you, and then we go to a brief Q&A. Before we get started, I'd like to explain a little bit about last week's call, and I want to apologize. I was trying to straddle two calls. I was on a call from the officials from the Treasury Department of the United States, and unfortunately I neglected to mute our call. Even though I do my work by computer and utilize the phone, I actually am a kind of an analog guy in a digital world, so I apologize for that error. When I got into the call, I was horrified. It sounded like feeding time at the zoo. But again, the call that I was on with the Treasury officials was productive. I'm going to give you just a brief overview of what was discussed on that call. They discussed essentially two things. First, the negotiations with Pelosi and the Democrats having to do with that last $1 trillion or $1 trillion+ tranche for the recovery funds from COVID. And second, a little of the information having to do with the implications of the transfer or the incorporation of the Federal Reserve into the Treasury Department. Now, there wasn't anything discussed directly having to do with the reinstitution of the Iraqi dinar. However, bringing the Federal Reserve into the Treasury directly affects the United States Central Bank. And the U.S. dollar is the number one currency held by, reserve currency held by central banks globally. And so as such, there is a ripple effect, and this does have an indirect control, or effect rather, on the reinstitution of the Iraqi dinar, and we're going to get into that a little bit here today. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit about what's going on in Iraq. First, by way of disclaimer, Trusts Unlimited is not the purveyor of the dinar and these other currencies. We're not advocating either the sale or purchase of these currencies, but we share with you what we believe to be relevant information as rather substantial currency holders ourselves. And as I frequently state, obviously, for those of us that hold the dinar, the most important piece of information is the timing for the reinstitution of the dinar. We continue to believe that January of 2021 is the most plausible date. An earlier date is possible, but again, looking at all of the information at hand, the most plausible date is January 2021, and the things that I've gleaned from what's been going on in Iraq tend to confirm that. And what's happening basically as we speak is the Parliament is dealing with the current budgetary shortfalls, which are the result of unexpectedly low cost of oil, the price per barrel, of course, the problem with COVID, and the ongoing problem with corruption, namely the national theft of Iraqi wealth through the auctions and through the imports into the country. Now, the Parliament has to grapple with several options as to how to close the deficit. Their primary concern is the payment of governmental salaries. Now, they have paid salaries through September, but they have not paid October salaries, and of course, we're 2/3 of the way through October, so November salaries are staring them right in the face as well. So they're basically got to deal with salaries for the next 3 months. Their first option is to print more currency, and that's been considered. But to do such, to substantially increase the money supply, would result in hyperinflation. So that's probably off the table. The next thing is to continue to use the CBI reserves, primarily being the U.S. dollar. But those reserves have been dwindling to a point that puts the CBI at risk. So that's probably off the table. The third option, which is possible but less likely with each passing day, is to continue to borrow. The regulations with regard to additional borrowing have been increased. And even though the CBI is technically an independent agency, it is now being overseen by the Finance Committee that was established by the Parliament, and it's the Finance Committee that would have to approve any loans, and that's unlikely as well. So by process of elimination, what is left is the reinstitution coming out of the program rate, or in essence, floating the dinar against the dollar versus the fixed program rate. Now, the Council of Ministers has approved the white paper, which has to do with government reforms in all areas, including currency and financial reforms. The Parliament is currently debating passage of the white paper. But what's different and what has us feeling pretty good about, again, January of 2020, is that Dr. Shabibi is testifying before the Parliament. You may recall, for those of you that have had currencies for some length of time, Shabibi was at one time the governor of the CBI, and he brought the currency to a point where it could have gone to a float or reinstituted in country in both 2012 and 2014. And of course, we all know who stopped that. It was Maliki. Now, a float would require a couple of things. It would require that they complete the project to delete the zeros. It would require that they establish the national education program so the citizens understand what the reinstitution of the currency means. It would mean ending the auctions and some of the nefarious transactions with regard to imports. But there are very strong arguments for doing the float and doing it sooner rather than later. A strong dinar is exactly what the country needs. It will allow them to foster global contracts for the rebuilding of their infrastructure. But it means something else too. As we all know, it can be argued that Iraq per square mile could be the richest country in the world with regard to natural resources. And we know that Basel III compliance is based on the known natural resources in a country and their ability to bring those resources to the market within 5 years. So Iraq, by floating their currency and by moving to a functional global currency, could not only, again, foster all of the international contracts and all of the wealth that that would bring into the country, but if you think about it, because Iraq is as wealthy as it is, the Iraqi dinar could actually become a currency that other nations would want to hold in reserve. Now, what happens when a country wants to exchange their currency or another currency that they're holding as a reserve for the Iraqi dinar? The fee for the exchange rate goes into the Iraqi treasury. That's kind of how the petrodollar works. When the United States went off the gold standard in the 70s and went to the petrodollar, what that meant is in order to purchase oil globally, countries had to make the purchase using the U.S. dollar, meaning they had to exchange their currency or some other reserve currency for the U.S. dollar. meaning that the United States Treasury picked up a couple of points on the exchange. That's exactly what could happen for the CBI in Iraq. So for all of these reasons, it looks like the Iraqi dinar coming out of the program rate going to a float, i.e. a reinstitution, is not only plausible for January, but based on the events of this week, it's likely. So this is very good news, especially for those of us that have been holding the currency for a long time. The difference now is that we have the right people in place. Rather than Maliki, we have Al-Kazemi as the prime minister. And then rather than having a feckless Barack Obama, who got nothing done in the Middle East aside from assisting Iran, we have Donald Trump, who is foaming at the mouth to get these things done. So hopefully this week is going to be a turning point, and we're on a glide path for the reinstitution of the Iraqi dinar in country. Now, that being the case, people are running out of time to get their affairs in order prior to the reinstitution and revaluation of the dinar and some of these other currencies. Now, most of the individuals that are currently holding the dinar are not wealthy individuals. They're hardworking Americans who, for the first time in their life, will be in a position to need to manage a rather substantial amount of money. And they're going to be doing it at a rather volatile time, both domestically and globally. And so to that end, Trusts Unlimited has put a turnkey program in place to assist you. It is a two-phased program. Phase 1 is pre-RV. Phase 2 is post-RV. Pre-RV involves the establishment of a package of pre-RV asset protection trusts with the assignment of your dinar and other currencies to that trust package. Post-RV involves all of the products, services, and professional referrals that will be made available to you after the reinstitution and revaluation of the dinar. So let's start with Phase 1, which is the establishment of your pre-RV package of asset protection trusts, again, with the assignment of your currencies on paper to that trust package. There's a good reason why Trusts Unlimited has established a package of irrevocable trusts. Very simply, it's because it's the best asset protection available domestically. Now, there are other entities that one can establish to provide some level of asset protection. For example, individuals can establish LLCs and sub-S corporations, and they do provide some level of asset protection, but primarily by dividing business assets from personal assets. The problem here is that the possession of these currencies is a personal asset. In addition, courts have ruled that LLCs and sub-S corporations owned in the majority by a single individual or a closely held group can be pierced for civil litigation. So the LLC and the sub-S corporation is going to be inappropriate, insufficient for your needs. Some individuals have established an entity referred to as a revocable trust, sometimes referred to as a living or loving trust. Now, these trusts will exempt your estate from the cost and delay of probate, and if properly structured, can in some cases substantially reduce and even eliminate the federal estate tax. But the revocable or living or loving trust can provide no privacy or asset protection. So they are going to be inappropriate for your needs. Some individuals have established individual or single irrevocable trusts, and that provides the best asset protection thus far. However, even the individual or single irrevocable trust has an inherent flaw, and it is this. If any asset within that trust is involved in civil litigation, that would necessarily bring your other assets and net worth into that litigation as well, because they're all owned by that same one entity. The only way that you can protect yourself both pre- and post-RV is therefore the establishment of a package of irrevocable trusts And I'm going to explain to you why that's the case and why such a package needs to be established prior to the revaluation of the dinar and these other currencies. So by establishing your pre-RV package of asset protection trusts and assigning your currencies on paper to that trust package, you will first be able to protect your privacy and your anonymity. Why? Because assets within our trust package are sealed, meaning that the general public will have no knowledge of your net worth or actual holdings. Second, by establishing this trust package, you'll be able to avoid personal IRS scrutiny. If you are holding these currencies in direct title when they revalue, the IRS computers will probably spit out an audit. And with the potential taxable magnitude of this revaluation relative to your prior year's earnings, you're probably looking at a full-blown 6-year audit. Such an audit would be time-consuming. It would certainly be frustrating because it's come along at the precise time that these currencies have revalued, and you have many more important things you'd rather be doing. And lastly, the cost of a 6-year IRS audit would probably be more than the cost of our asset protection trust. On the other hand, if your trust is in force and you have assigned your currencies to that trust package pre-RV, you will have successfully transferred the taxable event of this revaluation from yourself personally to the trust. Now, this is important for a couple of reasons. First, there's less than a 10% chance of an IRS audit if the taxable event of this revaluation were to occur within a rather sophisticated trust package such as ours. But second, and most importantly, even if the IRS determines to audit your trust, they can't do a 6-year audit. Why? Because the only taxable event within the trust will be the revaluation itself. The third reason you'd want to establish this trust package is if you plan on gifting currencies to family and friends in certain situations. Philanthropic gifting can always be done on a tax-preferred basis, either pre- or post-RV. But in order to avoid a substantial 40% federal gift tax, you're going to need to gift currencies prior to the revaluation. Now, if you're gifting to individuals that you have no problem giving them the currency to exchange for themselves, or giving them the U.S. dollar lump sum after you have negotiated the exchange, that can be accomplished outside of a trust with a standard gift letter. But if you are hesitant for any reason to give these individuals the post-RV lump sum, you can gift to them through a specially designed gift subtrust, which is part of our trust package. And because you're gifting through this subtrust, you will have complete control of the post-RV proceeds. Their dollars, U.S. dollars, will be protected along with yours. The language of this subtrust allows you to gift up to a certain amount of a currency, or currency meaning we've created a sliding scale, and you can give these individuals the exact U.S. dollar amount that you had in mind, irrespective of the exchange rate. And lastly, because you're gifting through this gift subtrust, you will be able to manage, invest, and distribute this money to these individuals as you deem appropriate. The fourth reason you'd want to establish this trust package is because it's been structured in such a way as to allow your estate to bypass the cost and delay of probate and the federal estate tax. I'm going to give you two quick scenarios. Scenario number one, you purchase 5 million dinar for $5,000. The day after that, those currencies revalue for $25 million. The day after that, you pass away, leaving your heirs an estate of $25 million. Now this estate must go through probate, process that ordinarily can take anywhere from 6 to 18 months. But probate is a public disclosure process, meaning that the general public will be aware of the size of your estate, who your heirs are, and how much they each stand to inherit. So if anyone feels they have a legitimate claim against you, your estate, or your heirs, they can simply file that claim with a probate court. And that could tie your estate up for years, and in some cases even decades. And your heirs will have either limited access or no access at all to their respective inheritance until the probate process is completed. Then there's something called the federal estate tax. This is the tax that the federal government would assess in order for that estate to be transferred to your heirs. Under current law, approximately $10 million of that $25 million estate would bypass any federal estate tax. But the balance could be taxed as much as 65%. Now, this scenario is not only unacceptable, it's completely and totally avoidable. How? Scenario number 2. You purchase 5 million dinar for $5,000. The day after that, you assign those currencies on paper to our asset protection trust package. The day after that, those currencies revalue for $25 million. The day after that, you pass away, leaving your heirs that very same estate of $25 million, but this time protected in our asset protection trust package. As a result, there will be no probate process. There will be no public disclosure of your estate. Your heirs will have immediate access to their respective inheritance, and the federal estate tax will be zero, saving your heirs as much as 55% of their inheritance. The fifth reason you'd want to establish this trust package is for some very specific asset protection benefits. One pre-RV, one post-RV. Pre-RV, this trust package will allow you to circumvent something called the Uniform Fraudulent Transfer Act. Now, what does that mean? Under our system of civil procedure, you can only be sued for what you actually own in direct title or the value of property at the time you transfer it out of title to an entity like our trust package. So let's take the previous example from before. You purchase 5 million dinar for $5,000, assign the currencies to our trust. They subsequently revalue for $25 million. You begin to live a lifestyle more reflective of your newfound wealth, and a couple of years down the road, someone sees that you're living rather comfortably and decides for whatever reason that they're going to sue you. Well, this prospective plaintiff has a couple of problems. First, he or she better have a very strong case and very deep pockets. Frivolous lawsuits won't work because this trust has been structured in such a way as to make it extremely expensive and extremely time-consuming to pursue civil litigation. But second, and most importantly, once any prospective plaintiff learns that pursuant to the Uniform Fraudulent Transfer Act, the only thing they could ever win by way of a civil award would be $5,000, the value of the currencies at the time you transferred them out of title and to our trust package, and none of the post-RV value of $25 million, there will be no lawsuit. Post-RV, there's an asset protection benefit I like to refer to as limited liability stop-loss. This protects you from future bad acts after you have acquired this wealth. This protection is accomplished through a legal strategy called segregation of assets. This is why we have established a package of trusts, and I'll explain to you how this would work. Once again, we'll use the same example. You purchase 5 million dinar for $5,000, assign it to our trusts. The currency subsequently revalue for $25 million. And now that you have $25 million in trust, you decide to make some purchases. So you purchase a larger primary residence, a vacation home, perhaps a half a dozen rental properties for tax write-off and additional cash flow, a couple of cars, a boat, and let's say an RV. But as you purchase these items, you place each of them in their own separate sub-trust to be managed by your master trust, the initial trust that you established pre-RV to which you assigned your currencies. Now, how does this protect you from an asset protection standpoint? Well, let's say one day you're driving one of your new cars, you have an accident, the accident is clearly your fault, and tragically someone is seriously injured or even killed. Well, the family of the victim is going to want to sue you. But remember, civil suits are about monetary awards, and you don't legally own anything. So the plaintiffs would be left to sue the owner of the car that you were driving. Well, who owns that car? One of your sub-trusts of which you are merely the beneficiary. And what's in that sub-trust? Merely that one car and the car insurance policy. In that scenario, the car insurance carrier will negotiate an out-of-court settlement with the victim's family. You will not be involved in those rather unpleasant negotiations. The car insurance carrier will repair or replace your car, making you whole. And all of your other assets and net worth are safely protected in the other sub-trusts. Why? Because the other sub-trusts are separate legal entities or persons having nothing whatsoever to do with the accident in question, and the plaintiffs would have no standing to pursue a separate legal entity completely uninvolved in this accident. So your package of trusts work very much the way a commercial barge would work, where all of the valuable cargo is stored in a series of small compartments. Why? In the event that any compartment is ever breached, the only potential loss would be the cargo in that one compartment. The cargo in the other compartments is safe and secure due to the firewalls, and the barge will never sink. Now, these benefits that I have described to you are lost to you if you do not establish your package of trusts prior to the revaluation of the dinar and these other currencies. Now, there is one other benefit, and it's this. If you are, in fact, the holder of one of our pre-RV asset protection trust packages, then you will be eligible to participate in Phase 2. All of the products, services, and professional referrals that will be made available to you after the revaluation of the dinar and hopefully some of these other currencies. I'll just make mention of one benefit here. Trusts Unlimited will be sponsoring a post-RV seminar to be held in Disney World, Florida, after the revaluation of the dinar, approximately 30 days thereafter. Present at that seminar will, of course, be the staff of Trusts Unlimited to assist and instruct you with the management and funding of your trust packages. Many of our clients have already expressed a desire to establish scholarship funds, foundational trusts, special needs trusts, charitable remainder trusts, and even the more complicated 501c3 nonprofit and offshore trusts. And the proper way to fund those entities is with a direct transfer of funds from your asset protection trust to those newly formed entities. We'll also have our tax specialists on hand as well. Now that you've acquired a substantial amount of wealth, many of you for the first time in your lives, you're going to need to understand some of the more sophisticated tax strategies to legally reduce your tax liability. We'll also have our independent fee-based wealth managers there as well. You're going to want to reposition assets after the revaluation for a number of reasons. First, we know statistically that 95% of all windfalls, however large and from whatever source, are lost within 3 to 5 years due to inexperience, mismanagement, and fraud. We also know that under the new G20 bank bail-in provisions, the failure of banks in the future will no longer be made whole through the general taxing authority of the respective governments, but first and foremost by the confiscation of funds at those banks. And so this is just another reason to get your money out of the banks and at work in other markets. And lastly, we know the general global shift from fiat-based to Basel III compliant commodity-backed currencies in and of itself is going to create extremely volatile financial markets, and you're going to want a substantial amount of your net worth in tangible assets in order to avoid that financial volatility. Now, our trust package is initially a package of 10 trusts consisting of one master trust that will hold your assigned currencies pre-RV, financial assets like bank accounts and investment accounts post-RV, and is authorized to manage the other sub-trusts, one optional gift sub-trust, which at any time can be converted to a standard sub-trust, and then 8 additional standard sub-trusts to hold financial assets like homes, cars, boats, etc. Now, this was the simplification of a rather sophisticated trust package that we've utilized in the past for our more affluent clients, a package that had an initial cost of anywhere from $6,000 to $10,000. But nearly a decade ago, when we decided to work with Dinarians, we were aware that that cost would just be prohibitive for too many Dinarians. So by simplifying and back-end loading the funding of these trust packages, we've been able to reduce the cost to $3,000. Now, there are several ways you can pay for that. If you pay us up front, we'll discount the price further to $2,500, saving you an additional $500. If that's not possible, we do have a deferred payment arrangement. You'd make an initial payment of $525, which would basically offset our out-of-pocket costs just to produce and deliver your trust package to you. The balance of the $3,000 would then be paid in $100 monthly installments. We will charge no interest. The only proviso is once the revaluation of the Iraqi dinar occurs, any unpaid balance would need to be paid within 30 days. Now, with this approach, anyone that has currencies and understands the need for getting their affairs in order and their trust in place pre-RV should be in a position to afford to do so. One other option, we do accept credit cards. Pay us up front with a credit card. Not only will you get the $500 discount, but the minimum payment on your card would be substantially less than the $100 you'd pay under our deferred payment arrangement. But we will work with you in whatever method works best for you. Our objective is to help you get your affairs in order and your trust enforced prior to the revaluation of these currencies for all of the reasons that we've stated. Now, we will be going to a Q&A in a moment, but before we do, and again for our newer callers, I'd like to tell you a little bit about Trusts Unlimited and why you should seriously consider contacting us to get our initial no-obligation package. Our trust package was authored by our attorney, Robert Bly. He's been a practicing attorney for over 40 years, specializing in the areas of estate planning, asset protection, and offshore planning. I myself hold degrees in political science, macroeconomics, and finance. I've worked in these areas for over 38 years, and I, along with my clients, were personally involved in the reinstatement of the Kuwaiti dinar in the early 90s. So between the two of us, Robert Bly and I have over 78 years' experience working precisely in this niche area, and I frankly know of no firm that can make that claim. Now, Bob and I have been working together for a decade in the areas of estate planning, asset protection, and offshore planning, and it has been disheartening from time to time to see people walk away from sound estate planning and trust creation because of the mistaken belief that by doing so they have somehow lost control of their affairs and their assets. In point of fact, under our system of civil litigation, it's when you hold assets in direct title that you can lose control of them or lose them outright. And it's invariably at precisely those times in life that you need and want control. If you've lived for any length of time, you've either experienced in your own life or through friends and family things like unexpected divorce, permanent incapacitation, the onset of dementia, premature death and prolonged and complicated probate processes. Then there are investment losses, business losses, and even bankruptcies. The number 2 loss of wealth in the aggregate, courtesy of the information age, is identity theft. But the number one loss of personal wealth remains confiscation through civil litigation. Anything you own in direct title can be taken from you. So in point of fact, the only way that you can manage, protect, and control everything at all times and in all circumstances is through the establishment of a package of irrevocable trusts, and particularly if you have an asset like these currencies that you're anticipating a substantial increase in value. And we at Trusts Unlimited will do everything we can to help you accomplish your personal and financial objectives both pre- and post-RV as we understand them. So again, thanks for listening to the call. I'm going to open the Q&A in a moment. I will be giving you our contact information. Again, I strongly suggest you contact us to get our initial no-obligation package. It does contain everything you need should you decide to establish a package of trusts, but it also has a lot of information about us, about the trust, and about the revaluation. So I'm going to open the Q&A now. 2 quick rules on the Q&A. We don't take service calls. Our existing clients can contact us by phone or email if they have service issues. Second, for obvious reasons, in order to participate in the Q&A, your name and number must be on the screen. So I'm going to go ahead and open up now. And while I'm waiting for any potential questions, I'm going to go ahead and give you our contact information. You can go to our website, which is trusts with an S, unlimited, LLC.com. Our email address is trusts with an S, unlimited, LLC at gmail.com. Our phone service is 307-274-4122. If you'd like to listen to a recent conference call playback, or if you'd be kind enough to refer us to someone that might be interested in our services, you can either go to YouTube and then go to Trusts Unlimited, or you can go to IQD calls and go to Trusts Unlimited, or you can simply dial the same number that you dialed for this live call this afternoon, with the exception of the last number. Rather than dialing a 4, you'll dial a 3 and then use the same access code, which is 739-394-pound. If you'd like to be included on our email list, you can go to our website, go to the bottom, enter your name and email address where indicated. You should be in our email list within 24 hours. Bear in mind that we only send emails out very periodically pre-RV, but after the reinstitution of the Dinar, valuable information in these emails will probably be going out on a weekly basis. So let's go to today's calls. Our first caller is area code 801. That's 801. Go ahead.
Jim, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
It's Clay Blackwell. How are you?
Okay, my friend. What's up?
Well, listen, this is the reason I'm calling. I tried to schedule an appointment with you earlier last week, and I left a message. I wonder if you got that. I guess it went to your answering service.
I may have. We're getting. It's ridiculous the number of calls we're getting, but I'm writing your phone number down right now, and I'm not even going to go to the call site. I'm just going to call you within an hour after this call.
Okay. In fact, let me give you the number to call. It would be better. It's 801. Okay. If you want to give it to me over, on the public thing, that's fine. Go ahead. Yeah, that's fine. 801-582-9580. That's my office number, and that's where I am most of the time. 801-582-9580.
582-9580.
That's correct.
I will give you a call within an hour after getting off of this call, my friend.
Okay, my question. You said yourself that a lot of this is going to be predicated on whether Trump wins this election or not. Would it not behoove the individuals that's looking to do a package to wait to see what happens after the election?
Okay, that's not exactly what I said. I said that I hope Donald Trump wins because we have no assurance what's going to happen if Biden gets elected. I'm not saying
Correct.
it won't happen, because it's not just a matter of the United States and the Treasury. Iraq needs to move forward, and a lot of other nations have spent a lot of treasure and financially. Close to $4 trillion has been spent on Iraq. And while most of that, or the United States has contributed most of that, other countries have ponied up a lot, so they're going to want to see this proceed. But, the truth is, it's a done deal if Trump's reelected. That doesn't mean it's not a done deal if Biden's elected.
Okay, because I remember you saying it could significantly slow it down, where this RV may not happen.
Slow it down. It could definitely slow it down, because Joe Biden is not a transactional person. Trump is.
Correct. Okay, and then the other thing was with Kadimi going to all these different nations. First he went to the U.S., then he went to the Saudis. Now he's over with the EU. He's establishing all these, what do they call them, memorandums with these different companies that he's greeting with there. But he can't make a move on any of that until they go international, which means he has to revalue their currency. Does that make sense to you?
I would not totally agree with that. He has to reinstitute the currency. Once he reinstitutes the currency, it is a functional currency. And once it's a functional currency, he'll be able then to at least secure forward contracts that will basically precipitate the revaluation. To be honest with you, I think the IMF is chomping at the bit to revalue their currency because, and I've said this on the calls, an argument can be made that per square mile, Iraq is the richest country in the world. And if the international community since 2003 has dumped nearly $4 trillion into that country, it's a no-brainer. They want their money back.
Well, that makes sense, but the IMF also requires conditions for their re-entrance into the international on the international stage. Is that not correct?
Yes, but the IMF also has a long history of postponing or rescinding some of this stuff. A good example is in the EU, all the austerity programs they had, and they had countries like Greece, Italy, Portugal, Ireland that were delinquent on their payments, and the IMF kept cutting them slack, reducing some of the draconian measures in their austerity loans and all of that. So, like I said, they want to get this done.
Okay. All right. Now, you mentioned that last week you cut the meeting short simply because you had we were in another meeting getting some information. I'm assuming that you gave us that initially when you spoke earlier in your narrative.
I did.
But my question is, I've never heard anything about Shabibi coming back, testifying. That's interesting. Did that come out of your meeting?
No, that's I've got other intel for that information. But if you connect the dots, it points to what's going on globally. Iraq is not the only country that's in a program rate. Iraq's not the only country in a program rate that has significant wealth. Iraq's not the only country where their central bank is looking to delete zero. Even the Iranians are looking to delete zeros because the shift to Basel III compliant, basically what we're doing is we're creating a level playing field. And the only way some of these developing countries can do it is to have their currency not based on their wealth as a nation vis-a-vis, their currency relative to other currencies, but their wealth. So countries like even Iran, but certainly Iraq, with their natural resources, I've done whole calls on just the wealth in Iraq, and it's staggering, the wealth of that country. And so, I think things are about to pop.
Okay. Well, listen, I'll tell you what, I appreciate you taking my questions, but I do want to speak with you. Are you in Mountain Time right now?
I'm Eastern Standard.
You're Eastern Standard. Okay, so you're 2 hours ahead of me.
I'm 40 minutes from Mountain Time, just east of it.
Oh,
so,
okay.
Right now it's quarter to one my time.
Yeah, it's a quarter to one your time, and it's a quarter to 11 my time, so I'm 2 hours behind you. Okay, so I should anticipate your call maybe around 12:30 my time, 12:30?
Within 60 minutes of whatever time it is, wherever you are.
Okay, that'll work. After the the narrative here. Okay. Thanks, Jim. I appreciate you answering my question.
Yes, sir. Take care, my friend. Okay, our next caller is area code 312. That's 312. That's got to be Les.
Yes, it is. Hey, what's up, Jim?
How's it going, my friend?
It's going all right. That last caller, your voice on his, whenever you were talking, it was coming back. You had a lot of feedback.
Oh, sorry about that. I don't know what.
Yeah, it was only on his end when you were talking. Yeah.
Oh, well, I didn't pick it up at all on my end. Sorry about that.
Yeah. But anyway, so the information from the meeting last week that you were on, you gave us all of it, or did you give us any of it?
Yes, I did. You missed the beginning of my call then, didn't you?
No, I didn't miss it. I'm just pulling your coattail a little bit.
Oh, yeah. They basically, I'll just reiterate it again, they talked about the ongoing negotiations, Pelosi and the Democrats, and the release of whatever this latest tranche is going to be. And, of course, since that call, a lot of things have changed. And actually what's happening now is Trump is a little bit at odds with the Republicans in the Senate as to how large a tranche this should be. But even the Republicans, I don't think either understand or can fathom what Trump's doing. Trump is basically breaking the back of the central bank. Now, that's going to have a ripple effect to the other international central banks, but in a backhanded way, it could actually be helpful for the reinstitution of the dinar because we're moving away from the printing of money, the fiat currency, and we're moving toward sound money, which is helpful to a country like Iraq. So it levels the playing field a little bit. So that's basically, what was going on that call.
So
that call had more to do with domestic politics than what's going on in Iraq directly, but there were implications of what they were discussing, which in my opinion positively affect what we're interested in, which is the reinstitution and revaluation of the dinar.
Right. So what happens when they put these tranches out? What is the purpose of putting these tranches out if they're going to be stalled until January?
Well, they might not be. That's kind of what's going on. And there's no way if Trump wins re-election, the money it's going right out the door, period. It's nothing.
Out the door? What do you mean out the door? What do you mean out the door?
Going to go out the door mean checks to people and small businesses.
Got it. Okay.
The other issue is, despite their best effort, the mortality rate for the CV-19 and for COVID is lower than the flu, and there's not even a vaccine. So a lot of what's going on is pre-election hype, and once the election's over, in other words, the blue states that are exercising these draconian lockdowns are going to stop it after the election because these people want to be reelected. And once the national elections are done, then the only thing they've got left to protect is their own sorry behinds. So they're not going to keep artificial lockdowns after the election, no matter who wins.
Right. Okay.
In my opinion. Right. I better add that.
I don't need it. It's okay.
Yeah, but just common sense.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I mean, you don't lock down healthy people. It's never been done. So something else is going on here. It's not science. It's just not.
Right.
Especially with a mortality rate of 0.0007. I mean, give me a break.
All right.
So that's where we are with that.
All right. Well, that's all I got. Thanks for taking my call, and say hi to the professor.
Will do. Take care, my friend.
All righty. You too, buddy.
All right. Well, that was our last call for this afternoon. Again, I'd like to thank all of you for listening to the call. Of course, we have a call next Wednesday. I like to say that certainly if something of a dramatic nature were to happen between now and then, we'll try to get out an emergency email and schedule an emergency call. with the upcoming election, there's never been a greater possibility that there's going to be some very important information and we need to get out to our people as soon as possible. But if that should not be the case, we will be back next Wednesday, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Thanks for listening and have a great week, everyone. Bye-bye.